And we have come to the end of the book of Genesis. Hi, thanks for joining me today, and I'm excited to share the last set of lessons that I've learned from the book of Genesis from chapters 48 to 50. At the end of chapter 47, we read how Jacob called for Joseph and asked him to swear to take his body out of Egypt and bury it with his ancestors in the promised land, and Joseph agreed. Not long after that, Jacob's strength was failing, and Joseph went to see him. Jacob told him about God's promise to him in Canaan. Now he told him that he was claiming his two sons, the sons that Joseph had in Egypt, Manasseh and Ephraim, as his own. And I believe that he was doing this like adopting them, bringing them into the promise by adoption. He also told Joseph that any other children that he had after them would inherit land within these brothers' territories. Now, when Joseph blessed Manasseh and Ephraim, he crossed his hands over their heads, putting his right on Ephraim and the younger one, and his left on Manasseh, the older one. This pattern followed the blessings of his father Isaac when he blessed him and his brother Esau, the younger coming before the older. We've seen this happen now, and we'll still see it happen as we go along. I feel like this is God's way of showing that things don't always follow patterns. We've talked about how birth order isn't quite respected, especially in this descendants of Abraham, in this lineage that God is blessing. We see that things don't follow the seemingly natural order. Jacob, after blessing his sons, right, Jacob blessed Joseph especially, and he gave him an extra portion of the land he had obtained from the Amorites, again, putting him before his brothers, giving him that preferential treatment. And when he was blessing his sons, because after he blessed Joseph, then he asked for all his sons to come, and he started to bless them one by one. And when he was blessing his sons, the order was disrupted again when he said to Reuben, who was the first son, that he would no longer be the first because he had slept with his wife. Now, remember when I said he knew and didn't say anything? So I guess he was, as we say, waiting for him in front. And he called him unruly as a flood. Indeed. So in essence, Reuben lost his birthright as the first. And when he blessed, from his words in his blessings concerning Simeon and Levi, we see that their anger and violence caused a curse upon them. They also lost their place in the birth order because he ended up, cursing them. And I feel that perhaps this had to do with what they did to Shechem and the people of Shechem when they murdered them for raping their sister Dinah. So according to him, their lot was to be scattered throughout Israel as a result. And then obviously that was the first three. Then we come to Judah. So now we see Judah probably taking the place of the first, because the first three were essentially not really blessed. So when he blessed Judah, he indicated that Christ will come from his lineage with this line, and this is what I got from there: the scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from his descendants, until the coming of the one to whom it belongs, the one whom all nations will honor. Sound familiar? Yes. And when we get to the genealogy of Christ, we'll see that Perez, who, by the way, is another twin who was blessed, another brother, I think, who was blessed above his twin, it was in the lineage of Jesus. So, from the blessings, right, we see that all the sons God blessed. The only questionable blessing was the brother called Dan. Now, that wasn't a blessing. According to Jacob, he was a poisonous snake that bites horses' hoofs so that it throws off its rider. And then Jacob says, I trust in you, God, for salvation. This sounds like this Dan didn't get a blessing, but we'll come to see more on that as we go ahead. Jacob gave instructions, like his ancestors before him, that he should be buried in that cave that Abraham had bought, where he, Sarah, Isaac, and Rebekah were buried. When Jacob dies, and he dies at the age of 147, Joseph mourns him, obviously, bitterly, and embalms him and takes permission from Pharaoh and then to go back to Canaan to bury him. And he got such an honorable burial. You see how when like all Pharaoh's elder statesmen and all the people who mattered went with him and mourned with him. And it reminded me of that, transference of favor. So the father of their most beloved person died, and so they went and mourned along with him. I thought that was really precious. And well, he was taken back to Canaan and he was buried as he had requested. After the burial, he had to reassure his brothers, because those ones now thought that he was just faking the niceness, and now that the father was dead, that he would be, mean to them. And I was touched when he wept bitterly and told them that no. And again, he said it, that what you guys meant for evil, God actually meant for good. And, he spoke kindly to them and really, really forgave them. I mean, I talk about how Joseph is my all-time favorite Bible character. And I guess one of the things is because of his ability to forgive. It was so amazing. It really was. So Joseph died at 110. Well, this wasn't as long as his father and his ancestors before him. And in my opinion, I think that he died because it was his time, and possibly because a change of government was coming, where the good Pharaoh dies and a bad one ascends the throne. I feel like God possibly didn't want him to endure any more hardships or suffering, that his work was done, go and rest. He also sort of foretold the coming crisis when he told them to take his bones back to Canaan. Like he knew that they were going to return back to the land, because his father had told him, and because he knew that, the God of his father was God and his words were true. So I was very comforted knowing that Joseph died trusting God. Now, I'd love to share my hashtag getting to know God moments, the last one for the book of Genesis. And it goes thus: images and prophecies of Christ abound in the Old Testament. Here we see in Jacob's blessing of Judah that he was blessed knowing that Christ was coming through his lineage, and the words that he spoke about him, being the one from whom the scepter will never depart. In fact, I don't want to get this wrong, so I want to read it. Judah, your brothers will praise you. You will grasp the enemy by the neck, and your relatives will bow before you. Judah, my son, is a young lion that has finished eating his prey. Like a lioness, who dares to rouse him? The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from his descendants, until the coming of the one to whom it belongs, the one whom all nations will honor. He ties his foal to a grapevine, the colt of his donkey to a choice vine. He washes his clothes in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, his teeth are whiter than milk. Now, in some of these things, it reminds me of some of the things I read in Revelation of the second coming of Christ, where he wears a white robe and the hem of the robe is dipped in blood. Jacob's blessing of Judah at this time shows that, he was speaking about what was to come in the lineage of Judah, and I think that was wonderful. Thank you guys for sticking with me throughout Genesis. And I look forward to us starting the book of Exodus tomorrow. No breaks, guys. Keep it moving. See you tomorrow. Have a wonderful evening. Bye.